Dr. Chris Busby is one of the leading chemical physicists in the world, one of the chief advisors to the BBC. He's also a professor. And Dr. Doug Rockey from Radiation Illness is too ill to come on. He is tough as nails, 30-plus surgeries. Many of his team have died just cleaning up DU, which is, again, gets inside the body. But, Dr. Long segment coming up, this one's short. You got cut off by the break trying to give out some videos that people can watch and a top government regulator admitting something to you. Please continue.
Yes, no. You need to know that the risk model that the U.S. is using and every other country is using to estimate the amount of health damage you get from radioactive exposure is operated by an outfit called the International Commission on Radiological Protection, the ICRP. Well, I met with the head man in the ICRP. His name is Jack Valentin in Stockholm, 2009, April, and he'd just retired. And I did a face-to-face interview with him on video, which you can find on Vimeo.com. And if you type in Busby Valentin, that's probably the easiest place to find it. Valentin is Valentin. Anyway, on this...
Sir, we'll post it on Infowars.com. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. In this talk that we had, he admitted that the risk model that's currently being used is inaccurate for internal radiation by a factor of up to 900 times, 999 times, 2 orders of magnitude. And that's kind of what we're saying. So, and this would explain the effects from uranium that you see in the Gulf War. It would also predict that the exposures to the material from the Fukushima reactor will have a significant effect. You'll get increases in cancer, leukemia, all sorts of things, but they will be denied on the basis of the current risk model. That risk model is wrong. It's easy to show that it's wrong, and this is probably the greatest public health scandal of all time, because that is the operated model since about 1955, and it's been there just to save the nuclear industry and enable it to continue to make bombs and nuclear power and all the other stuff.
Doctor, many experts we've interviewed and many experts I see in the news are saying since Monday that this is a cover-up, that they believe meltdowns have already occurred, that the Japanese now admit that some of the cores, 2 of them, are exposed. What about the 640-plus thousand rods they admit were stored there, most of which were stored on top of the containment buildings and have been ejected into the atmosphere spectacularly when the Mark I MOX reactor at Reactor 3 blew up Monday?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with all of those things. In fact, I said this quite early on the British radio and television. I knew about the MOX, and incidentally, what a curious and stupid place to put your spent fuel on top of the reactor. I mean, it's almost asking for trouble to put it right on top of the nuclear reactor. Actually, the amount of radioactive fuel outside these reactors is greater than the amount that's inside the reactors. And if that melts down, which it can do, incidentally, if the plutonium melts down, we could have a nuclear explosion like they did have in Mayak in 1957, the famous Kishtim explosion, and that explosion created a wasteland of 350 square miles in Russia, which is still a wasteland.
Break down that incident for those that aren't aware of it.
In 1957, a waste tank in the Mayak facility exploded at Kishtim in Russia, and we didn't find out for several years that this had happened. And it blew radioactive waste, plutonium and so forth, over an area of 350 square miles, I believe, and created a wasteland, which anybody can see in the Russian film Stalker, incidentally, the very famous film by Andrei Tarkovsky. The background for the Stalker film is the wasteland of the Mayak facility, which is still fenced off and nobody can go in there because it's so radioactive.
Unbelievable. And continuing, we're about to go to break, but what would you do if you were on the West Coast? Most of the models, New York Times, U.S. Department of Energy, NOAA that you mentioned, say that the main plume's going to hit Los Angeles and then turn north along the mountain range. And that's just the first leakage from Friday. Days behind that is the more intense.
Yes, well, we've already put a signal out on the low-level radiation campaign website, llrc.org, where we're monitoring the situation. What we told people to do is you have to stay inside, you have to drink bottled water, please don't drink the milk, seal the windows, get hold of a Geiger counter. If there are any increases in radiation, get inside fast, okay? Because any increases in gamma radiation will signal the arrival of these particles, and it's the particles that you have to worry about, because one particle, when you inhale it, can get into the lymphatic system and cause trouble, cause cancer, cause leukemia. And the problem about external and internal radiation is that the particles deliver an enormous dose to local tissue. It's really simple. It's not rocket science. If you get a big dose from outside, you get so many tracks going through each cell. But if you inhale one single particle, you can get a lot more tracks just through the little tissue volume close to that particle. And that is the problem. That's the mistake that's been made by the ICRP, and which this guy Valentin now concedes to be a problem. And in fact, there was a British government committee set up just to consider this. It was set up by the British Minister for the Environment, Michael Meacher.
All right, Doctor. Stay there. Long segment coming up. We'll be right back with you, sir, to continue along that line.
We're on the march.